Jimmy Savile just can't help attracting his own special kind of private pandemonium.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at 10 people with respectable positions of authority who were also harboring horrifying secrets or ulterior motives.
How could we have missed this? Is there something that we did or didn't do that would have given us a clue?
Number 10. Jim Jones.
Started as an effort by a charismatic preacher to build a new society, but it ended, of course, with the tragic deaths of more than 900 people.
By their very natures, cult leaders have to be respected, charismatic, and personable, and perhaps none fooled the world quite like Jim Jones. Jones was highly respected in his lifetime, advocating for racial equality and offering support systems for the disenfranchised. He also built significant political capital, receiving praise from mayors and city officials, and even being appointed to the San Francisco Housing Authority Commission.
Did his message at the time resonate with you?
Yes. No isms, no sexism, racism.
He appeared to be a rare combination: a commanding spiritual leader, a prominent civil rights activist, and a community organizer. But Jones's story ended in significant tragedy when he took the People's Temple to Guyana and murdered over 900 members, their story becoming one of the most shocking events of the 20th century.
Jonestown was described as his paradise, and it was not.
Former member Leslie Wagner Wilson says followers were overworked and underfed.
And then as time wore on, I realized that there was no future in Jonestown. Jim became increasingly paranoid.
Number 9. John Wayne Gacy.
Ed and Lily Grexa lived next door to the family of John Wayne Gacy on Summerdale in Norwood Park. The Grexas' daughter Audrey used to babysit for Gacy.
So I stayed in the house, and I didn't know there was bodies under there then.
Today, John Wayne Gacy is known as one of the most famous serial killers in American history. Active throughout the 1970s, Gacy murdered at least 33 people and buried most of them in the crawl space of his house. But go back to the 70s themselves and you'll find a very respectable man.
Just come inside, answer a couple of questions, and don't even think of it like a job interview.
Gacy was highly active in politics, working closely with the local Democratic Party, and even having his photo taken with First Lady Rosalind Carter. He also volunteered for community events, ran a successful construction business, and famously performed at hospitals and children's parties as Pogo the Clown. Many people liked him, which is why it came as such a surprise when the news broke.
John actually called right after he got arrested and talked to my dad. And my dad said to him, "Why'd you do it, John?" And I guess John says, "Oh, I'm innocent, I didn't do anything."
Number 8. Bill Cosby.
It was a striking sight this afternoon. Bill Cosby in handcuffs.
Of all the actors who got Me Too'd, Bill Cosby was one of the most shocking. This comedian was enormously respected in his heyday, not only for his legendary career, but because he seemed like a genuinely good person. He was deeply involved in promoting education, donated millions to charity, and was a trusted public figure, resulting in his nickname America's Dad.
Dad, can I talk to you for a second?
Is it about money?
No.
Let's go.
It was also this reputation that allowed people to ignore or mistrust the initial allegations against him. But when over 60 women publicly accused Cosby of assault, his reputation was thoroughly and permanently trashed. His fall from grace marks one of the most dramatic downfalls in the history of Hollywood and may be studied for decades to come.
At that trial, several other women who alleged Cosby had similarly assaulted them testified against him. Today, Judge Stephen O'Neill said the evidence, sometimes from Cosby's own words, was, quote, overwhelming that Cosby had planned to drug and assault Constant, and he declared Cosby a sexually violent predator.
Number 7. Coco Chanel.
Trousers, the little black dress, even getting a suntan, they're all part of the revolutionary legacy of Gabrielle Chanel. The designer radically transformed the way we dress in the first half of the 20th century. Now Paris's Galliera Museum is paying tribute to her and her fashion manifesto.
One of the most iconic fashion designers in history, Coco Chanel revolutionized feminine style in the early 20th century. Unfortunately, World War II somewhat ruined her reputation as she knowingly dated Nazi officer Baron Hans Gunther von Dinklage.
At Paris's Ritz Hotel, her affair with a Nazi intelligence officer was common knowledge.
But it's so much worse than that. In 2011, Hal Vaughn published the book Sleeping with the Enemy, reporting on intelligence archives that were recently declassified. Turns out, Chanel was also a Nazi spy and worked with them in various capacities, even going by the codename Westminster. Chanel also tried using anti-Semitic Nazi laws to force out the Jewish partners of Parfum Chanel, intending to leverage them for her own financial gain.
In recent years, Chanel's dirty laundry has been making headlines at home and abroad.
Number 6. Jimmy Savile.
For more than 40 years, Sir Jimmy Savile was a show business friend of the establishment. A friend of the rich and famous, even of prime ministers and royalty.
Before 2012, Jimmy Savile was a highly respected man in Britain, his commanding TV career being just a small piece of the pie. Savile also embarked on extensive fundraising campaigns and volunteered at many hospitals, both of which earned him public praise and institutional trust. He also had enormous royal and political connections, having personal ties with many powerful people, and even being knighted by Queen Elizabeth II for his services.
How on earth do you raise £10 million in 3 years?
But shortly after his death, it was revealed that Savile had assaulted hundreds of people throughout the course of decades, making him one of the most prolific offenders in British history. In hindsight, the warning signs were there, but they were largely ignored, owing to Savile's reputation and extensive connections.
Everyone was bedazzled by him. He was like a conjurer. He mesmerized people. We trusted him.
Number 5. Vera von Brown.
I'm Vera von Brown, speaking for the Alabama Space and Rocket Center.
Following World War II, roughly 1,600 Germans were brought over to the United States to work for the American government. One of them was Vera von Braun, who became a celebrity scientist during the space race of the 50s and 60s. And while his past with the Nazis was known, he was quickly rebranded as a Cold War hero, while the US government downplayed his Nazi affiliations.
They were interested in all sorts of advanced technologies, and they also noticed the small group around Vera von Braun, which was developing rockets.
In reality, von Braun was highly complicit in a system of forced labor and mass death, using concentration camp prisoners in his V-2 rocket program. Conditions were inhuman, and at least 10,000 to 20,000 people died while working at his site. In fact, more people died building the V-2 than were killed by the weapon itself.
The Versailles Peace Treaty had forbidden weapons like tanks, planes, heavy artillery to Germany. But nobody had thought of mentioning missiles.
Number 4. Gilles de Rais.
Gilles de Rais, Marshal of France. Formidable to men, fascinating to women, feared by all.
This knight gained fame as a valiant military commander during the 100 Years' War, and is primarily known for fighting alongside Joan of Arc. He was also born into nobility and became one of the richest men in France. But in the years following his military career, Gilles withdrew to his estates, where he engaged in increasingly erratic and sinister behavior. Local children began disappearing, but their peasant families were often too poor or afraid to confront a powerful nobleman. But rumors spread as more children disappeared, and Gilles was eventually investigated and arrested. His true body count is hard to substantiate, but it could be in the hundreds. He was found guilty and hanged on October 26, 1440. Number 3. Russell Williams.
Colonel Russell Williams seemed the embodiment of the military ideals of duty and honor. Pilot for prime ministers and royalty, commander of the secret Canadian base in the Persian Gulf.
A decorated colonel, Russell Williams served in the Royal Canadian Air Force for over 20 years. A model officer, Williams oversaw important military operations and personally flew VIP dignitaries around the world, including Queen Elizabeth and various Canadian prime ministers.
May 2005, the Queen and Prince Philip in Canada. In command of their flight, an officer on his way up in the Canadian Forces, Lieutenant Colonel Russell Williams.
He was also a murderer and sexual offender. Williams committed over 80 fetish-related break-ins between 2007 and 2010, often stealing lingerie before graduating to assault. He also murdered 2 people, Jessica Lloyd and Marie France Como, a military flight attendant. He was eventually sentenced to life in prison and stripped of his rank and medals. His uniform was even burned by the Canadian military in a symbolic gesture of protest.
And today, what began as fetish and fantasy led to a life sentence of solitary misery.
Number 2, Bernie Madoff.
But then she said, there's just one thing about him, though. He never looks you in the eye. My mother got it before anybody. She just didn't put it together. Because this god was a demon, a devil.
Very few financiers were as respected as Bernie Madoff. This guy was a king on Wall Street, running the firm Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities and managing money for banks, charities, hedge funds, celebrities, you name it. He was also a pioneer in electronic trading and helped develop NASDAQ, becoming one of its first chairmen.
He began serving on industry boards. He began being invited to regulatory roundtables. And he was elected to 3 terms as the chairman of the board of NASDAQ. And in the early 90s, he was a trusted, respected Wall Street statesman.
And while all this was going on, Madoff was running the largest Ponzi scheme in history. In 2008, Madoff's own sons turned him in, and investigators uncovered $65 billion in fake profits. Thousands of investors lost their life savings, and Madoff was sentenced to 150 years in prison. It's a stark reminder that even seasoned professionals can be deceived when due diligence is ignored.
The sentencing of Bernie Madoff, the mastermind behind the biggest Ponzi scheme in history, getting 150 years behind bars.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1, Harold Shipman.
From the dock, he'd shown no emotion. He stared straight ahead as the foreman of the jury read out the verdicts. Guilty to 15 counts of murder and to forging the will of one of his victims.
Doctors are some of the most respected individuals in society, and we quite literally trust them with our lives. So it's absolutely horrifying when that trust is broken, especially through malicious means. Harold Shipman was a British GP who operated his own practice in Hyde, Greater Manchester. Through his role as a doctor, he gained the trust of vulnerable patients, especially those with cancer and elderly women who lived alone.
These are the women Shipman murdered. Not one was suffering from any serious illness. Everyone died suddenly after a visit from Dr. Shipman.
He would then give his patients fatal doses of pharmaceutical heroin and certify the deaths himself, often attributing them to natural causes like stroke or heart failure. In this manner, Shipman murdered an estimated 250 people, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in history.
Harold Shipman killed more people than anyone else in British peacetime history. He was convicted of 15 murders, but those were just the tip of the iceberg.
Are you one to trust authority figures? Let us know in the comments.
Can I thank you for everything you do for every good cause?
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.